It'll be okay. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Wallace Marshall from UCSF.
Yeah, so you're a professor at UCSF, and what do you study there?
I study how cells develop structure and divide and grow.
And we're here at Maker Faire. How long have you been coming to Maker Faire?
I think this is the fourth year we've done it.
And why do you keep coming back to Maker Faire?
Because we love talking to the people who come here. So everyone who comes here is interested in either science or building things or how things get built. And that's exactly what we study, is how cells build themselves. And so, even though they're not biologists, everyone always gets really into it, and they ask really amazing questions that we would never get asked at a regular science conference.
And when you come here, do you come by yourself or do you come with your lab?
Now I bring a lot of people from my lab, and actually now it's even grown, so friends of students in my lab will also come. And this year we actually have a kid who came last year, unrelated to us completely, who asked if he could come back and help us this year. So now this little kid is here helping us with a demonstration.
So you might know this, not all science faculty is supportive of doing stuff away from the lab. Why are you so much more a proponent of this?
I have never actually met anyone who's sort of unsupportive of it. Not everyone does it, and I think it's because it just takes a little extra effort. You've got to, organize yourself and set aside time to do something, and you don't really get necessarily an immediate reward for doing it, but it's so much fun. So I think most people actually try it once, they're going to want to keep doing it.
And do you see value for your students in doing stuff like this?
Oh yeah, for them it's great because they learn. A lot of times you sort of do things and you don't really think through why you're doing them. And if you only try to explain it to other professional people, they sort of already can view why you're doing it. And so you never get to think through the thought process of why you're actually doing it. So talking to a totally unprompted sort of public audience is amazing. They think about it in a different way. And so the students get to really think about what they're doing, why they're doing it. And
Jacob,
also,
come back here.
And then also they just get really excited, I think. So I mean, I like seeing people like get sort of think about things in a different way, and it builds up everyone's excitement level. So we sort of get really excited every year as the Maker Faire starts to come closer.
So Jacob, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm a graduate student in Wallace's lab.
And do you want to show us around the exhibit that you guys built?
Sure, I'll be happy to show you around the exhibit. So, as Wallace probably explained earlier, the purpose of our exhibit is to show that cells are actually capable of learning. So what we have here is Stentor ceruleus. So these are extremely large single cells. They're about 1 millimeter long, and they're actually capable of habituating stimulus, so a primitive form of learning. So if you stimulate them the same way multiple times in a row, about 20 times, they'll actually learn to habituate that, and they'll stop responding to it. So they'll stop contracting, which is the measured response. So we've constructed here an apparatus and puts it up to an Arduino and a lovely giant red button that allows people who come by the exhibit to actually habituate Stentor. So you can see if I press this wonderful red button, the exhibit actually presses down on the plate, stimulates the Stentor. We have a video over here, probably hard to see, but you can see the Stentor contracting. And so that lets people see that over time you can actually train the Stentors to stop responding to the stimulus.
So I'm going to stop you there around the exhibit. I'm going to ask you impressions as a student.
Okay.
Did you feel like you needed resources or anything to come out and start doing this kind of stuff at Maker Fairs?
We need resources. So yeah, I mean definitely, in order, as you can see, the exhibit did not just come up out of thin air. So the fact that Wallace is a wonderful PI and is extremely supportive of this kind of outreach was really critically important to us being here today. The fact that, one, we're here on a Friday afternoon, usually a work day, and we have support to do that. The fact that we actually have wonderful support from the NSF, thank you NSF, to make the exhibit, buy the things we need to construct this, is critically important. Yeah.
And what kind of advice do you have for other grad students that want to do this kind of thing?
To seek out resources that are already available. You'd be amazed, especially, I'm at UCSF, and I'm sure many other universities have something similar. They have programs where you can outreach into the community. So at UCSF, we have something wonderful called SEP, the Science Education Partnership, with tons of resources, tons of opportunities to get involved. Even if the university doesn't have something, there are probably local science fairs that could use judges. There are maker fairs all around the country. Any sort of event where you feel like you can communicate with the public about science will make you a better science communicator, and therefore a better scientist, which is really the goal of your training.
So people should just go do it.
I mean, effectively, that's sort of, it sounds like trite advice, but I feel like there is no situation in which you cannot Google for a local maker fair. You cannot Google for a local science fair. A local high school in need of mentors for science fair students. There is almost, I don't think, a situation where any grad student wouldn't be able to find someone in need of assistance for professional sciences.
Thanks, Jacob.
Of course. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, I think this is working. So, Alex, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Alex. I am a first-year bioengineering PhD student, and I'm also taking Advanced Design Studio in the D School.
So what motivated you to take a design class as a bioengineering student?
I knew coming to Stanford that I that I really wanted to take classes in the design school. I've always been interested in human-centered design, and I think that that's a human-centered design complements engineering really nicely because it teaches you how to design for people and for humans to use technology. I'm really interested in that.
How supportive has your advisor in your school been about you taking a class outside of science, especially in your first year?
He doesn't know a whole lot about the D School. He knows that I'm enrolled in this class and it takes a lot of my time. But I would be interested in figuring out ways of bringing him into the D School and giving him more background for the work that we do here and showing him how it relates to engineering.
And so you said it's a complement to your engineering work. Can you give us an example of how being in some of these classes has actually informed some of your research? And it's early.
Yeah, I think that's an ongoing, like, my thinking is evolving on that. But I think on a very, high level, it's really the engineering projects that I do. I think I'm starting to think about them more in the context of, how they're going to be used to actually treat people. So, my research is on drug delivery and extended drug delivery, and so that's a very clinical application. And I'm interested in seeing how I can sort of tweak that project to make it more human-centered and more applicable in the real world.
End of the day, do you think this kind of training is valuable for a lot of scientists as they're going through graduate school?
I think it's totally valuable for scientists going through graduate school. I think, we're designing and engineering and investigating technology to help people's lives, and learning about how people use technology is really important to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. And thank you for taking the time. I'm going to list out some actual some examples of various scientists that have actually used design principles to inform their science communication coming up next. All right, this is not the only time that's happened to me today. So Bart, you're one of the bosses here at Nerd Night SF. Can you give people the 20-second primer on what Nerd Night is?
Yeah, we are a lecture in a bar series where we ask three smart people, historians, scientists, technologists, to give short talks on our expertise in exchange for free beer. That's it.
And what do you say? Where does science fit in? How about that?
Science is one of the many pillars of nerdery. We try to be very inclusive, and science is certainly a fascinating, special area. But I think people don't necessarily segment their enthusiasm to just being about science. The same people who are going to really like a DNA folding talk might also like talks on San Francisco's rank control history. And so we try to be really inclusive about what we call nerdiness and welcome science as part of that umbrella.
And tonight's a big sold-out event. There'll be 270 people here or something like that.
Yep.
Why do you think they come every month over and over? Because you've been doing this 6 years now.
This is exactly the end of our 6th year, which I'm really excited about. I'm still a little bit bewildered that people come to this. We really just try to have fun and just celebrate learning in a very casual atmosphere. I mean, the idea is let's drink and learn something. And I'm really lucky that a bunch of people enjoy doing that too.
And last question, how do you prepare the speakers up here? Because I imagine you work with people that have done given a lot of talks and some that haven't, but this atmosphere is totally different than what people are usually used to.
Well, there's a lot more art and science to that. So we basically feel out how much support speakers need, and so we have a sort of graduated response. We do everything from speaker coaching and training services and deck evaluation to just sort of lightweight conversations and make it very hands-on. We try to be flexible in how we handle our things.
And I lied. There's one more question. Why do you keep doing it? 6 years is a long time.
So this is literally for me and what I find exciting, and I just love all this stuff so much, and that's why I keep doing it, because I enjoy it immensely, and the fact that like hundreds of people come along for that ride is just amazing.
Thanks, Bart. We are going... Hi, Andre.
Hi.
So, a little bit background on yourself.
Okay. What kind of background do you want to know?
Like,
I'm a Libra.
Your science background.
Oh, okay, right. So I have a specialist in psychology from the University of Toronto, my undergraduate degree, and a PhD in cognitive neuroscience from UCLA.
And how did you go from being a PhD scientist to actually doing a lot in science communication?
Yeah, well, after I got my PhD, I went back to school and got a master's in music because I really wanted to be a musician, and there was a hole in my musical training that I wanted to fill. And then I wanted to spend a couple years just making a living as an entertainer. And that was hard to do just as a classical musician, so I basically took any gig that my agent sent me out for. And one of the gigs that I got sent out for, or at least was asked to audition for, was the host of a show on the Oprah Winfrey Network called Miracle Detectives, where I was to be the scientific foil to a believer in miracles, and the two of us, like Mulder and Scully, would go around the country and investigate people's claims of the miraculous. And that's where I learned three things. One, the amount of people that I could reach on one episode of Miracle Detectives dwarfed the number of people that would ever read every single one of my published scientific articles and or attend any one of my operatic performances. So all of a sudden I realized, wow, there is an audience out there that I can reach in this other way. Two, that there is a sort of art to science communication, and at the time I still wasn't very good at it, but I felt like I had enough of an inkling of how I could get better, that I could improve to the point where I could actually make a difference, that I could do something well, and that my performance skills could be applied to science communication. And three, that people out there really want to know about science but have no way of getting that information in a way that's accessible in a lot of ways.
So there's a lot of science communicators that are following this handle this week.
Okay.
How and where did you go to learn how to get better at what you do?
Oh, there was nowhere that I went. I just, watched myself and saw what parts of my performances made me cringe. I noted what aspects of what I was saying or doing would lead to people listening versus tuning out. And I just really figured out how to talk about science with a vocabulary that was neither too simple nor too complicated. So it was a matter of pulling all these things together and building up this vocabulary and skill set, etc., to just get better at it. And I still have a long way to go. Look, it's not like I'm totally there, but I get better with every talk and with every presentation. And I feel like there are times when I've changed a few minds and opened a few of them, and so that's really rewarding.
Now you're a female scientist. There's been some high-profile cases of difficulty for female science communicators in the online realm. Has that been a similar experience for you?
As a female science communicator, not outright. I do feel that there have been times when maybe I've been passed up by projects because of my gender, but I don't know that that's necessarily true. I certainly know that I was hired for Miracle Detectives because I'm a woman. So they were specifically looking for a female foil. So, do the opportunities that pass me by and the ones that I get even out? Probably. I really have no idea. When I was in a graduate school, I certainly experienced moments in which I felt as if there was an expectation of how I was to behave, and because I didn't behave in that way, that created some tension in terms of my relationships, but there was nothing outright. I was never sexually harassed or abused in a kind of an outright way, but I just felt like the environment in general wasn't super conducive to, I don't know. I guess it's hard for me to talk about it because I feel like, it's kind of a cop-out to say, well, I left academia because I'm a woman. I didn't. That's not why I left. And I still have a hand in academia, and I still enjoy it. And I had a lot of really great mentors and a lot of people who treated me extremely well. And yet there were definitely times when, I felt like there was a a paucity of role models of women who were doing well and happy and had a family and everything was hunky-dory. But maybe that's true of any scientist.
Within academia, how supportive was the environment for you to go out and do science communication? And has that changed?
So I didn't do a lot of science communication when I was a graduate student. It certainly didn't seem like it would be reflected well upon. I don't think, like, if I said to them, oh, I'm going to go do a television show, people would have been like, great! In fact, when I did agree to do the television show, I did worry about my scientific reputation. And I did feel that there were times when I certainly got used by some individuals in science who felt, okay, now she's out, selling herself and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a natural reaction to people who see somebody else doing something that maybe they wanted to do and they kind of go in the other way around, right? But I also think that, we all, people sometimes envy other people who have attention, and that can be an aspect of it. But they're not the audience that I'm reaching out for, right? I mean, if I'm writing a scientific paper, I really care what they think. If I'm going out on television and trying to communicate science, I don't really care what the scientists think. I care what is getting across, the message that is getting across to the wider audience. That's why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it for the scientists. We can go and have conferences in which we can, talk about our topics in detail and exchange intellectual ideas there. But really, when I'm communicating science to the public, it's the public I care about.
But at the same time, you run a weekly podcast with an amazing co-host, by the way. I really like his work. That is an interview show with a different scientist pretty much every week. What do you think the import of having, this kind of in-depth pieces with scientists to get their voices out there is?
Oh, I think it's really important, and I think that's why scientists need people like you and me in order to do that. Because, first of all, they don't have the time, the inclination, or the skills to communicate their work often themselves. There are lots of exceptions, right? We have tons of scientists who are on the show who are excellent science communicators. But that's not always the case, and it shouldn't be a given. I don't think that we should expect our scientists necessarily to also want to come out of the lab and communicate their work. They can hire science writers, they can hire science communicators, and actually I think we should be following the granting model of the UK, where every single time you get a grant from public money, you have to put part of that grant into science, into communicating your results to the general public who is paying for them. I think that's totally right, and I think that there should be jobs for scientific communicators who can do that well. So yeah, I think it's incredibly important, but I also think that, in my humble opinion, you and I actually perform a service for those scientists. We are helping them get their ideas out in a way that is digestible.
And last question, where do you draw some of your science communication inspiration from? What are you consuming? What are you enjoying?
Well, there's so many great media now for science communication. I love reading the writings of my favorite science writers, Carl Zimmer and Ed Yong and Deborah Blum and Jennifer Willett and Sandy Blakesley, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Don't want to exclude anyone, so I'll just stop talking about any specifics. I also love the fact that I get pitched books by publishers all the time, and I have my favorite publishers who send me books that, I almost always like. I like reading the New York Times science page. There's a bunch of other blog posts and stuff that I read, on the interwebs.
But it's really the written word that you find the inspiration from.
Yeah, I listen to other podcasts when I'm exercising or when I'm, going out and doing things. I don't tend to listen to them necessarily to get ideas for new shows. I usually listen to them to get ideas about the craft of podcasting. And I don't watch a lot of YouTube videos. I just spend too much time in front of my screen writing that I don't like doing it when I don't have to work.
And where can people find out about your work in science communication?
Okay. Well, the repository is my website, andreviscondas.com, which has a number of links to pieces I've written for lay people, like at motherjones.com, etc. And I think maybe even the American Scientist link is up there. There's tons of videos up there of some of the talks that I've given. People can find me on Vimeo or on YouTube. Although I don't have a ton of stuff up there, there's certainly enough to keep anyone busy for the amount of time that I would expect them to listen to me.
Thanks, Indre, for joining us. This this background.
Awesome.
Norm, tell us about Tested.
Tested.com. We started in 2010, originally as just a technology review site. We still do much of that, but we really cover makers and people who build interesting things. So we've gone around the country and around the world to learn about people and their obsessions and their projects, everywhere from high-tech kitchens to even CERN and the Large Hadron Collider.
So you're traditionally a tech site.
Yes.
How big of an audience do you have, roughly?
Our videos are hosted on YouTube, and I think we have about 1.8 million subscribers on YouTube.
So where did science and science communication come into the foray? Because a tech site, I expect tech.
Yeah, and as it turns out, science and technology are pretty much intertwined. A lot of the technology informs how science smarter way. So we don't take anything on face value, and learning about science really educates us on a lot of new technologies like rapid prototyping.
And so I saw a podcast recently where you and Adam Savage talked about yourselves as science communicators. Mm-hmm. Do you actually fancy yourself that way, that you actually do science communication?
I think Adam absolutely is a science communicator. I like to consider myself a science absorber, someone who's just learning. But I think that's an important part to understand the communication process, is to digest how it's actually being communicated.
And where do you draw inspiration and resources to get better at what you do, particularly in science?
Watch a lot of videos. I think it's having a good critical thinking approach to content, which is what we do here, is really important. And so, watching a bunch of videos, whether it's on YouTube or even television, TED Talks and stuff like that, really informs how we can better communicate, whether it's about science or about technology.
And you do long-form videos. Most of your videos are not 3 minutes. They're mostly like 10 minutes and longer.
Yeah.
How do you think science functions in that kind of environment?
I think it's great. I think anytime you can talk about something in depth, I always believe there's no, you don't need to really shorten the content length for any audience. I think as long as the content itself is interesting, and because it's the internet, we're not bounded by any of the constraints of broadcast. I think it's always better for me to go in depth rather than just surface value.
And last question: do you watch your own videos?
Oh, I try not to. Yeah, I have to. Yeah, I mean, in the process of producing and editing and reviewing them. Yeah,
and you critique them, and you think about how to redo them to get better.
Definitely have an internal review process to try to get better. Always be improving and always be testing.
Thanks, Norm.